will be posted on the Western Province social media and YouTube channel, as well as our own, once I figure out how to do it again. And we will post it on for anyone that wants to go back and just revise before the exam. So, guys, just to give you some information, just some background information in regards to the course, I have sent out the dates for the course that have been slightly amended from the initial release. So the course will start tonight, which is the 29th of November. We will then get on to the 1st of December, as tomorrow we have a roundtable meeting. And then thereafter, next week, the course will take place on the 8th and on the 6th and 7th of December. The week after will be 12th and 13th for the last lecture, where we'll just go through a bit of revision on the 15th, and we'll write on the 17th. So I trust everyone is available for those dates. There will be recordings available if one cannot make it to a particular lecture. Are there any questions before we begin? Anything you guys would like to share before we begin? Okay, I'm going to now share. The meeting is being recorded. I am going to now share the. I've actually left it as the Western Province Umpire Association Level 3 lecture. And I've done this on purpose because we must acknowledge the Western Province Umpire Association. Tom and Abdullah Steenkamp have, Tom Okros and Abdullah Steenkamp have put this together, and have definitely assisted all unions, not just KZ and Inland, with not only a summarized version of the laws but also with regards to revision questions, as well as how to attempt the exam. So Tom, that now that you're on the call, I'd like to thank you personally for the assistance as well, outside of these calls, with assisting with getting ready for this presentation. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to now start with the level 3 course. So we are going to try to get through a few laws this evening. I'm hoping to get through about 4 laws, 4 to 5 laws, which is law 2, law 11, and 12 and 14 that we will discuss this evening. If you can't hear me at any time, please, I do have my phone on vibrate. Please just drop me a message. If you cannot hear me, I will see the notification and ensure that there is load shedding in the area, not in mine particularly at the moment, but there is load shedding around, so I'm sure connections are not the greatest. All right, can everyone see the presentation before we begin? All good?
Yes, I can see.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. So I think everyone is certainly abreast as to where we get the laws of cricket from. The laws of cricket are from the MCC handbook, or the MCC laws of cricket law book. It will be the laws that we're going through this evening, which will be law 2, law 11, law 12, 14, and 18. So we'll begin. I do apologize. I'm trying to click it. There we go. Perfect. So we begin with law 2, which is the umpires. Position of the umpires. The umpire shall stand where he can best see any act upon which his decision may be required. Subject to this overriding consideration, the bowlers and umpire shall stand in a position as to not interfere with either the bowler's run-up or striker's view. That being, again, obviously, something to take note of is we always line up before a game. So if you get to the ground early, or when you get to the ground early, not if, there's no, you must always get to the ground in advance, is field technique is to line up. So one may take, and I actually saw this on the Western Province outdoor presentation that they did the other evening, is there's 2 methods to do it. One would be with the bail, where you place the bail behind the middle stump, or the position of the middle stump, and ask your colleague that's standing on the other end upright to the stumps whether he or she can see it. If not, then you know that you sort of in the middle of the stumps. And the other one would be to take a stump, off stump, and put it behind the middle stump and see whether it's aligned. And if so, make a mark there, and you know you're standing in the correct position. So again, someone like myself, I take the bail and I just make a mark as well as where I would like my feet to stand as well. So I make a straight line behind the middle stump, knowing that's where I stand, and then thereafter go back into in and make a mark where my feet would be and how wide I would like to stand. So again, you don't want to obviously stand too wide, whereby you again coming in, interfering with the bowler's run up. And so you also want to make sure that you are not uncomfortable as well. So just make sure maybe you are shoulder length apart, feet apart, and you are comfortable at the crease. Okay. The strikers and umpire may elect to stand on the offside instead of the onside of the pitch, provided that he or she informs the captain of the fielding side, the striker, and the other umpire. So in the level 1 exam, you guys would have remembered that online, with the multiple choice, it gives you a few scenarios, a few selections, and you must ensure that you inform the captain of the fielding side, the striker, and the other umpire. So it doesn't necessarily mean you have to inform the wicket keeper, unless he's the captain, obviously, of the fielding side. But a lot of times you always inform the wicket keeper and just inform your colleague. Please don't also forget to inform the striker. And that doesn't necessarily mean you have to make a loud noise or anything per se, but it's just a normal captain. I'm here. I'm standing on the onside. That's it. It doesn't mean that they can take it away from you. Uh, hey, I'm standing on this side. So just take note of who has to be informed when you are doing so. Okay, in law 11. So I know you must be wondering why we are going through only a few laws. So we're actually just going to be discussing the laws that are actually going to be pertaining not only in the exam, but things that are going to come out more in depth within the paper as well. So law 11, an interval. I'll just go through the various classes of intervals. Okay, the following shall be classed as scheduled intervals. So these are scheduled breaks or scheduled intervals in a match. So please take note. It doesn't necessarily, as you can see, when it comes to rain, so say a side skin falls in the field of play, those are unscheduled breaks. Those are things that you cannot control. Whereas these scheduled breaks, if you want to call it scheduled breaks in inverted commas, are things you can, things in inverted commas, it would be what you can control. So and it's what's set in the playing conditions or what's set prior to the game. So it'll be the period between close of play on one day and the start of the next day's play. So that'll be your 4-day game, 3-day game, 2-day game. It'll be those ones. We don't do that at club level, so just take note of that. A lot of time when we get asked this question, perhaps in the level 1 exam or even the trainer's exam, we forget this one because we're so used to putting our mindset in 50 over cricket or T20 cricket. So the interval between innings, again, that happens a lot of the time, whereby you in a 50 over game you may get innings that ends earlier than the scheduled time for lunch or scheduled time for dinner, and you have a 10-minute changeover and you come back. That's interval between innings. Interval for meals, I've just mentioned it, dinner and lunch. So that'll be your meal intervals. That'll be your intervals for sorry, can you guys see the presentation? I just accepted someone into the meeting.
Yes, I can see.
Thanks, Dane. So your interval for meals will be your lunch, tea, as well as your dinner interval. Interval for drinks. So everyone that's shadowed now would notice that you get your various times for intervals, which we'll discuss as well. But in the law book, it does say for drinks is not more than 5 minutes. So the guys that have shadowed now in the 4-day game would notice that they give a 4-minute drinks, whereas in us in 50 over cricket, we give the 5 minutes. So please, meals and drinks are separated, and you can remember it just by the duration of the interval. Drinks is only maximum 5 minutes. 5 minutes is such a small period. Would it be a meal? You cannot complete a meal in 5 minutes. All right, unless you're rushing and trying to get into a presentation like I did a few minutes earlier. and then any other agreed interval. So any other agreed interval would be something that you would address before the match, or even could happen during the match. An example of this happened a few years ago in England. And in England, the Queen, I think, was coming over, or the King, if I'm not mistaken, or sorry, not the King, the Queen, or it was a Prince, Prince Charles at that time. It was coming to the ground. It was at Lords. It was a centenary function or something to that effect, and they stopped play. But that was discussed the day before or prior to the match. So again, that's another agreed interval with the umpires. So just take note of those classes of intervals. So as you can see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 intervals. All right. Make the presentation. Okay, duration of intervals. An interval for lunch or tea shall be of the duration agreed. So that's in your playing conditions, in your bylaws, etc. Taken from the call of time. So not from the time you walk off the field, but from the time play ends. Before the interval until the call of play on the resumption after the interval. So for example, if you're giving tea at 20 minutes and you come off for tea at say 2 o'clock, and so you'll go back at 14:20 if you gave it for 20 minutes. So just because it takes you 5 minutes to walk off the field doesn't necessarily mean now you must come back on 14:25. So I think we just need to make sure that we, even at club level, we address this quite extensively when it comes to drinks. A lot of the time we always look at our watch after some you should always have drinks on field, but again, sometimes a club might ask you, can you just go off quickly? They don't have a 12 man. We should try and implement guys coming onto the field and one person or two people going off to fetch it. But we always look at our watch when we take the first sip. No, it's from the time you call time in terms of break in play to the start of the next after the resumption of the interval. All right, and then an interval between innings shall be 10 minutes. So this is again, if an innings ends early, etc., you'll have it a maximum of 10 minutes. All right, commencing from the close of an innings until a call of play at the start of the next innings. I think that's fairly simple and fairly easy to understand. Okay, take note of this, ladies and gentlemen. If an innings ends when 10 minutes or less remains before the agreed time, before the time agreed for close of play on any day, there shall be no further play on that day. No change shall be made to the time for the start of the following day. So if your scheduled time is 5:30, you're scheduled to end at 5:30. And now an innings ends at 17:22. All right. So that means now you've ended up at 8 minutes. If the innings ends 8 minutes before the scheduled close of play, you will then end your day's play immediately. You will not come back on at 17:32. Why? Because your scheduled interval has now passed. All right. And doesn't mean now that you start 8 minutes earlier the next day. Okay, it's just, again, you will just, that time just gets wiped out. So it'll be, if it's 10 minutes or less before the agreed close of play, you will end play immediately. Everyone okay with that? Okay. If a captain, this is now allowance for interval between innings. If a captain declares an innings closed during an interruption or scheduled interval of more than 10 minutes duration, provided that at least 10 minutes remains of the interruption. So we spoke about a rain delay or interval, again being any meal interval, for example. No adjustment shall be made to the time for the resumption of play on account of the 10 minutes interval being 10 minutes interval between innings. We consider as included in the interruption or interval. So what that means is, so say you have a 20-minute tea interval, and at the 5 minutes after, which is 20 minutes, 5 minutes after the start of tea, when tea begins, he comes in, captain formally looks, and I want to declare. All right, then you will absorb those 10 minutes within the 15 minutes that are left. Hey, doesn't mean now you start your 10 minutes at 5 minutes later when tea is already in play. All right, so again, no adjustment shall be made to the time for the resumption of play on account of the 10 minutes interval between innings, which shall be considered as included in the interruption or interval. If less than 10 minutes remains of the interruption or interval, when the captain declares the innings closed, the next innings shall commence 10 minutes after the declaration. So at the time he tells you, so say he tells you now 5 minutes before you're going on, then only will you give 10 minutes from that period that he tells you. You're not going to complete 5 minutes of the interval and then start your 10 minutes. It'll be 10 minutes from the point of when he tells you. Okay, changing the agreed time for intervals. If at any time during the match, either playing time is lost through adverse conditions of ground, weather, or light, which again is your judgment, or in exceptional circumstances, or the players have occasion to leave the field other than at a scheduled interval, the time of lunch or of the lunch interval or of the tea interval may be changed if the two umpires and both captains agree. So, a perfect example. In Pietermaritzburg, we're having a lot of rain, as many of you would know. And when we have a 4-day game and we're not on in the first session, to maximize play, because especially in the latter part of the afternoon, the weather does become better, sometimes in Maritzburg, but the weather does tend to change for the better, and we are able to get play. To maximize play, lunch is scheduled for 11:30. We make it 11 o'clock in a 4-day or 3-day game, just to ensure that we can maximize play. All right. So again, you will discuss it with the board captains. You don't necessarily look. No one ever tends to say no for whatever reason, but you always try and ensure you engage with them, and then obviously you inform them of the decision. And then again, for example, when you get your tea interval, if you lose time on a particular day for however long, you will also try and make up time in your subsequent days. And in Pietermaritzburg, we make up time before tea, because tea is scheduled for 2:10, if I'm not mistaken. So we then make tea half an hour later because we can make up half an hour, but we can't start 8:30 in Maritzburg, where it's a scheduled 9 o'clock start. So we push the day a little longer, and we have tea at 3 till 3 o'clock. So as you can see, there is ways that you can maximize play, as well as long as you consult with and you both agree. All right. Okay, change the agreed time for the lunch interval. If an innings ends when 10 minutes or less remains before the agreed time for lunch, the interval shall be taken immediately, because you're not going to then fall into your long lunch break. It shall be of the agreed duration. So if your lunch break, again, I'll use the Pietermaritzburg playing conditions. If your lunch break is 40 minutes, then you would take it from the time the innings ends. So if lunch is scheduled for 12:30 and at 12:22 your innings ends, you're not going to wait for 12:30 then start 40 minutes. You're going to start it at 12:22. All right. So it's less than 10 minutes before the agreed time. So you'll start your lunch interval immediately at 10:22 till 1:02. All right. So at 12:22 for 40 minutes, you'll start it. Okay, everyone happy with that? If because of adverse conditions of ground, weather, or light, or in exceptional circumstances, a stoppage occurs when 10 minutes or less remains before the agreed time for lunch, then whether or not the agreement is reached, the interval shall be taken immediately. Again, same thing, similar concept. Wherever your agreed time for lunch is, you'll start your time immediately. Okay. So take note of. If an innings ends when 30 minutes or less remains before the agreed time for tea, the interval shall be taken immediately. So one asks the question, why? Because just look at it realistically or logically. Your tea interval is a short duration. It's over 20-minute duration at times. So you're going to take tea immediately, okay? Because it's such a short period. And you're not going to go take 10 minutes and then come back and then play and then have a 20-minute. No. So it shall be of the agreed duration, again, of say 20 minutes, if that's what we have and which we have in Maritzburg, of the agreed, and should be considered to include the 10-minute interval. Okay, so you're not going to have 20 minutes and then say to a team, no, now you got a further 10 minutes to change over. No. Okay, so if your innings ends, bang, done. Okay. If when 30 minutes remains before the agreed time for tea and interval between innings is already in progress, play shall resume at the end of the 10 minutes interval if conditions permit. Okay, change that again. We're still on changing agreed time for tea. If because of adverse conditions of ground, weather, or light, or in exceptional circumstances, a stoppage occurs when 30 minutes or less remains before the agreed time for tea, then unless either there is an agreement to change the time for tea is permitted, or the captains, okay, agree to forego the tea interval, the interval shall be taken immediately. The interval shall be of agreed duration, and play shall resume at the end of the interval or as soon as conditions permit. Okay. I do apologize. It seems to be lagging. Mr. Dawal Mehta has informed me that I am lagging. Can everyone hear me well, ladies and gents?
For me, it was lagging earlier, but hundreds now.
Hey,
It's fine on my end.
thank you. I'll just call up the screen presentation again.
At times it does lag a bit.
Okay, I'm going to try and change. I do apologize. I'm going to stop sharing and record and just change the connection device. If you can give me a few minutes.
Hi guys, sorry.